Hi there and welcome to another episode of the 33 vlog. My name is Warren, I'm one of the co-founders at 33, and today on the show I have with me triathlon coach Mark Ryan. Mark is an excellent coach. He's a British Triathlon Federation accredited level 3 coach. He knows an awful lot about triathlon training and really how to maximize your results, but best of all, he has an excellent manner in communicating that clearly, simply and easily, and absolutely love that. Was very fortunate to meet Mark when he reached out to Erica and myself here at 33 to see if we'd be interested in joining him at Oxford Triathlon Club for a nutrition presentation. We love doing that kind of thing, so of course we took him up on his kind offer. And as a part of that, the day grew. Instead of it being an evening, well, we ended up meeting Mark during the day. He very kindly offered us a pool training session where he gave Erica and I a lot of swim analysis, which is great. We've got Ironman Canada coming up in the summer, and the swim's an area we both have a lot of work to do. His input was great, but it's more his knowledge and the way he shares it that was so rich, which is why I really wanted to get him on this show. Now, what we're going to do in the course of this conversation, Mark is going to share with you his top tips for swim, bike, run and improvement, things that any athlete can use to raise their own game, because that fits so much with our mission at 33, which is bringing athletes the tools to really take themselves to the next level. So that is why we share content like this. We bring people like Mark in, we mine them for their knowledge, and we share it with you. And it's also why we make the incredible sports nutrition products that we do. Of course, I would say they're incredible, but I am the co-founder. This thing is a mission, though. We make that sports nutrition products. You'll find those at 33shake.com. But look, enough from me. Let's get on to this conversation with Mark Ryan. Mark, thanks very much for taking the time out this morning to come and join us, and particularly thanks for the awesome swim session in the pool in Oxford last week and the analysis you sent through. It's been absolutely brilliant. Erica and I have been digging out blind on that stuff ahead of the Ironman in the summer. Just so valuable to get that visual, because I mean, I don't know about how you find with many athletes, but my swimming certainly doesn't look like I thought it looked like.
I think, yeah, I think that's a good thing about video analysis for me, and that's why it's been so powerful. Is that sometimes you have no comprehension at all of what you're actually doing under the water or above the water. So it's always brilliant to kind of video people and show them back, and when they actually see themselves swimming, it's such a surprise sometimes. I know when I first got videoed, about 7 years ago, and I saw what I was doing, I couldn't believe some of the things I was doing. It wasn't too bad. But then, just to see what you're doing gives you that understanding, and then it's the best way to try and go.
It really seems like a sort of picture being worth more than 1,000 words there, because you can get told stuff, but in your head, and swimming's maybe it's because I've done less of it, but it feels like one where it's very easy to think you're doing it, and possibly from a coaching standpoint, really hard to actually see exactly what people are doing because half of it's under the water. So the video can open that up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll talk about this a bit later, but yeah, I think sometimes people get too obsessed with what's happening above the water, but arguably that's where the technique really matters, when your hand's going into the water and getting a really good catch, and that's where you get all your power. So yeah, to see what's happening under the water is really, really powerful, and a good way to, like I said, to kind of fix whatever could be going on and try and get a little bit faster, which everybody wants.
Well, and that's it. And looking at everybody getting faster, what would be great to go through today is just one or two sort of really key points from your years of coaching experience with so many athletes at different levels, to sort of pick out the biggest wins that you think most athletes could benefit from, or the biggest areas where, regardless of what level you're at, these are just simple either reminders or things that you can pick up and just go and start using to raise their own game today. So which sport would you like to start with? Do you want to go swim, bike or run?
Let's do it in that order then, as all triathletes recognise. So yeah, let's start with a swim. I mean, let's just build on what I talked about there. So yeah, the thing that I think is most important really, and a lot of people come to me and just say, oh, my technique's really poor. I don't know how to fix it. I do this, I do that. And you're absolutely right. Once you get them in the pool, you video them from different angles and you show them back. Sometimes they're not actually doing what they think they're doing. A classic for me is they say, oh, I don't kick my legs hard enough. And actually what is a much better technique for endurance swimming is to actually relax those legs off. And when you can show people that technique and work with them a little bit, that's where you can really make some really big strides with their swimming. So yeah, really kind of helping people with technique is a really big win in swimming straight away.
So, we're working on technique at all levels there. And with reference to kick, I mean, I've often wondered, how should you balance the kicking? Because if I've understood correctly, in a race, you don't really want to be kicking much. Your legs are going to have to do most of the work as soon as you're out of the water. But is there something to say that you should maybe work on the kick more in training? Because that is something that when you're then kicking at a lower efficiency, you're getting more out of it on race day, or is the kick a less important thing overall?
Um, well, so I think the kick's important because if you kick too hard, all you're going to do is make yourself tired. So if you kick too hard, arguably anything about, I mean, if you're doing, say, 50-meter sprints, you want to kick because you want to get every single thing out of your stroke as you can for that short distance. But certainly for endurance swimming and triathlon swimming, which is, 400 meters, 750 meters plus, if you kick hard, all you're going to do is tire yourself out. And as a coach, I don't really do a lot of kicking in my sessions. I don't do a lot of kick work. So if what I sometimes do with a swimmer is I'll get them in the pool and I'll get them to do 50 meters there and back of just kicking. So one hand on top of the other, kicking there and back. And when they get back, I say, how do you feel? And normally it takes them a few seconds to get their breath back, and then they can explain how they felt. And, that's what I use to explain to them. If you're kicking too hard in your swimming, all you're going to do is tire yourself out. So what I tend to do with the legs is just try and get people, so use some techniques to try and get people to relax those legs off and then use them for balance. And even the big elites and stronger swimmers will still only get about 10%, 15% of their power from their legs, even if they kick really hard. So all it's going to do is make you really tired. You're much better off in your swimming trying to transfer the power to the front end of your stroke and work on a really good catch through the water. That'll give you much more power and efficiency through the water, and then just relax those legs off just to give you a bit of balance.
Sounds good. So that there's, in terms of raising the swim game, a focus on technique can help anybody, and reduce, or at least be conscious of getting the power. I like the way you put it there, getting the power. Instead of really focusing on the legs, get that power up to the front end and really work on that catch and everything else afterwards. From all the athletes you've seen, I mean, are there any common areas where people could simply start to become more conscious and benefit just when they're in the pool on a regular session?
One of the key things, it's normally the first thing that I actually deal with all swimmers, no matter kind of what elite or down to the first time someone's been in the pool. We always look at the breath. Sometimes, and holding on to that breath can be the worst thing that you can do in your swimming. So normally the first thing I get people to do is have some awareness of whether they're breathing out when they're under the water or holding on to that breath. And it just helps you feel more relaxed if you've got that strong exhalation under the water. And that can just be a really big bang for your buck in swimming. So, yeah, working with the breath is a really big win that you can do. And then sometimes just using the pull buoy to actually not kick those legs at all, if we go back to that. Those people who do kick hard, get them to use a pull buoy and then just use their arms. So that's the only power and forward momentum they're getting with their swimming. Suddenly, most people say to me, oh my word, that feels so much easier straight away. So by not kicking at all, and just using the pull buoy and not kicking at all, suddenly that they realise how much easier swimming can be. So there are a couple of really quick things that you can try and do just to get, quite simple techniques just to get a really big bang for your buck.
Because you've reminded me there. I mean, that's a great one about isolating the arms by using the pull buoy just to take the legs out of the equation in a session. But the breathing, that was really good. That was something you touched on the session we did together, I remember now, where you were talking about an exercise, the point being, and correct me if I'm wrong here, as I remember it, that a lot of triathletes are not breathing out fully under the water, which is leading to the fact they're not getting all the oxygen they need, they're not as relaxed as they could be, they're not flowing the way they could be. And you had an exercise involving sinking down to the bottom of the pool, if you could, as a way of helping people understand when they really were exhaling. I mean, do you want to go into that a little more? Is that a part of this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So with the breathing, that's a really simple exercise you can do. So all you do is simply just go to the deep end of the pool, keep yourself nice and vertical in the pool, put your arms across your chest, move away from the side, let yourself go under the water naturally rather than cheating and pushing yourself down, and then just so a nice strong exhalation. And what should happen if you're nice and relaxed and you're exhaling really well is you should start to feel yourself sinking down in the water. So as you get rid of that air, you lose that buoyancy and you relax and you start to sink down. And if you're not relaxed and you're really tense in the water, then what tends to happen is your head stays at the top of the water and you don't sink down at all. So it's a really good exercise, particularly for people who work in an office all day and they come out of the office, they're a bit stressed from work, they go straight to the pool, they get in, they try and swim, and they're really tense after work. So a really good technique is just to go down the deep end and try 4 or 5, maybe 6 of these sink downs until you can just sink yourself down naturally in the water by exhaling that breath. And it's just a good way of relaxing in the water just before you then go ahead and do your swimming. Just completely switch off from work, ensure you're relaxed, and then just work on that breath.
Moving on from the swimming,
Yeah.
we're going to rip through transition and out onto the bike. What are your favourite things here to find with people where they can gain a bit of an uplift?
Yeah, I think the thing that I find here with a lot of people is that the bike. So I'm a big fan of doing 2 swims, 2 bikes, 2 runs. And if you do 2 bikes, then normally
as a weekly session.
Yeah, it's a weekly session. I mean, sometimes people do 3 in each session, but certainly with age groupers, people who have busy lives as well. General rule of thumb: 2 bikes, 2 swims, 2 runs, plus a little bit of strength and conditioning work and mobility work and things like that. So yeah, as a general rule of thumb, that tends to work quite well. And on the bike, it would normally be 1 interval session and then 1 long, easy bike. And then what I tend to find with a lot of people, when they go ahead and do the bike on a Sunday, tends to be the day people go out, they just do it too hard. They want to go out, they want to get as much, what's the right word? I think the most performance they can out of that session. So what they tend to do is just go really, really hard and think if they go for a 3-hour bike, for example, then the harder they go, the better they'll feel off the back of it, and the fitter they'll get. Actually, what I found is it's the opposite. If you go for that long bike on a Sunday, that's probably the longest training session of your whole week that you're going to do. So if you do that a little bit too hard or faster than you should do, you're going to build up a lot of fatigue. And you'll take that fatigue into the sessions that you then do throughout the next few days. So I think one of the things that can be really effective is just to relax and enjoy it. Like I said, you might be out for 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, however long you go out, but just to make sure you relax and enjoy that session, appreciate being on the bike, is just and have some fun is probably the best thing you can do. When I give sessions to my athletes, I always say to them on a Sunday, nice easy bike, relax and enjoy it, and then put a smiley face on, just to make sure that they still get the message that it's just a nice easy session.
And in terms of gauging easy, because everyone's different, and some people like to do it off power, some like heart rate, some like feel. Would keeping it conversational in terms of the effort levels, is that a good enough rule of thumb, or where would you put easy bike? Because like I say, there's quite a broad spectrum out there.
Yeah, so to be honest, I don't think it can be too easy. So a lot of the time, that long session on the bike is just about getting time in the saddle. I think as age groups, I think it's much better to urge on the side of caution and do it slightly easier than slightly harder. Like I say, what you'll balance that off with is doing a really good interval session, and that'll give you your power and strength and speed on the bike. But this would just be to build endurance. So even if you're doing sprint triathlon, 3 hours on sprint triathlon, even 3 hours on the bike, nice easy pace. If you've got time to do that, will just give you that. It'll really build that aerobic base, and that's just really beneficial towards the end of any triathlon. The more you can develop that endurance base, the more you'll kind of perform towards the end of a race.
That's great. Well, this is really timely because we're recording this on a Friday. I've got my long bike tomorrow. And, naturally there's a little bit of looking back at the times from last week and, the routes and this and that. And will easy be easy? I don't know. I'm going to go extra easy. So thank you for that one. Just a quick aside on that. The intervals during the week, turbo trainers are nothing new. Smart trainers are new-ish, but indoor training with apps is kind of exploding as a more mainstream thing right now. Do you think these are beneficial for particularly age groupers or even any athletes actually looking for maximum value out of their turbo time, or do you think there's a risk of distraction and junk miles if it's not focused correctly?
I think there's always a risk of junk miles if it's not focused correctly. But with regards to turbos and indoor training, yes, absolutely. I'm a big fan of it myself. It's got to be down to what the athlete wants to do. Not everybody likes sitting on. I've got mine set up in the garage, and it's I've got four walls around me, so nobody really wants to sit there looking at the four walls, and it can be a little bit boring. So what I tend to do with those sessions is keep them to about an hour maximum. But yeah, I've started using, I've been using it for a few years myself, Zwift, Zwift. I'm sure most people have heard of it now. But I deliver my sessions to my athletes, my interval sessions on Zwift. And what we do is we'll work out their threshold power on the bike. That could be a whole other podcast in itself on how to create that. But if you know what your power zones are, then we set we work out what your threshold power is, so the maximum your maximum effort for about an hour effort, to generate those power zones. And then when people go onto the indoor trainer, all they have to do is just sit down and just follow the plan, so they don't even have to think about it too much. But yeah, the good thing I've found about Zwift, so for people that aren't familiar with Zwift, it's almost like a computer game, and it's like a virtual world that you cycle through. And the technology is, you can cycle against people all around the world in a little group, or you can cycle on your own, and there's different courses around the world. So it's a fantastic little tool. But what it'll do is it'll take people through the session. So, I design them here, and then I add them onto Zwift, and then all somebody really has to do is sit down, follow the warm-up, follow the intervals, follow the time and power that they spend in each interval. And it just switch your brain off and just work through that workout. So it's really, really easy. I know there's other people as well. You said the other day you're working with Sufferfest as well. So there's and I think there's Trainer Road. So there's several out there on the market, and they're all really advanced in technology. And yeah, people love it. Absolutely, people love it. And it's really helped people to really focus in on their training. And just back to your point earlier, yeah, I'm a big fan of doing them indoors, because if you're, say, doing 10-minute interval at a certain power, you can really measure that interval. Whereas, if you do that on the road, you might come to some traffic lights or a roundabout, you've got to stop, let the traffic go, then carry on, get back up to that pace. So it's a really good way of consistently hitting, that power at a certain interval. So yeah, it's a really good training tool.
No, that's good to hear, because Erica and I are with the Ironman in Whistler coming up in July. We don't have a huge amount of time, and the turbo mixed in with both Zwift and Sufferfest is starting to fill that time. But I was just wanted to make sure that it was a wise choice. It feels good at the moment. I have to say the Sufferfest thing has been valuable for, once you do the fitness test in there, they give you a more detailed fitness profile than FTP. It's their own one, and but what it does is it gives you, it's both your 5-second power, 5-minute, 20-minute, and there's another one in there as well. But anyway, they blend them all together. and it's the relationship between them that they then score you on, all those things. But what it'll do is then throw you up, right, here's where you're weak. Your weakness is, and it doesn't matter about what your power level is, but it's where you are weak in relative to your other strengths across your whole ability.
Yeah.
And I was doing 1 or 2 sessions of those a week for 10 weeks, working weaknesses each time, which felt logically like that would be bang for buck. I just retested last night, and a 15% average increase across all 4 scores. So,
oh wow,
I'm
fantastic.
pretty happy with that. I was coming from a fairly, I hadn't been riding seriously for a long time, and I've never focused on technique. Going to your earlier point, I've ridden a bit, I've swum a bit. The ultramarathon running was very different. I did focus in there, but bike and swim I never have. So the technique appears to be giving me a bigger lift. Now, the point beyond that would be to then customize that with someone like yourself who can really then fine-tune this, and I would guess take it to another level by bringing in absolute custom training every time. And presumably you'd supply those into... Do you have to go via Trainer Road or something to get your programs into Zwift or Sufferfest or places like that, or do they take them in directly?
No, so I use a tool called Training Peaks. So that's how I write my sessions and deliver them to the athletes. And what I do is I write them in Training Peaks, and then when I put them into somebody's plan for the day, when they log on to Zwift, all they have to do is find the Training Peaks section and then click out on its workout of the day. So they click on that and it just brings it up on the screen. It's really, really simple.
That's great.
Just to link back to the point you made, all the sessions that I deliver are all completely customized to that person's individual ability. So absolutely. So we do a test in swim, bike and running. And then what we do is we plug in those values and it'll tell you your current level of performance. And it doesn't matter where it is. It's just completely where you are now. So every single session that you do should have a specific purpose, try and train a specific fuel source and system. And, it's all about making sure that you're doing the training in the right zones for the right amount of time based on where your current level of performance is. And that's the best thing that you can do as an age group athlete who has to balance family life, work life, training. So that's the best way to kind of balance things out and make sure everything's customized for your current level of performance and ability.
Yeah, because it feels like that can give you a technique lift, an ability lift beyond simply just banging out the miles there, which is, has to be done as well. This is really good stuff. So moving on, we've now dumped the bike, we've whipped on our shoes, we're out on the run. What are your favourite things to go to here that you think people can use to raise their own levels?
So that probably does link really well into the technique, because I think the biggest thing that people come to me for, before we start working together as coach and triathlete, is just running injuries. So there's some crazy statistic out there that something like 82% of all runners are injured at any one time. One of the biggest things that you can focus on is run technique. So it sounds like the easiest thing in the world to just put on a pair of trainers and go for a run. But again, if you're not running and recruiting the best muscles, running muscles, so your glutes, your hamstrings, things like that, then you're not gonna have the best technique, and that's increasing your likelihood of getting injured. Sometimes I get people coming to me saying my running technique's awful and, I really need some help with it. So we put them on the treadmill, we do a little bit of video analysis there. And then we also do some mobility and strength testing. And what I've tended to find with most people is that if they're running in a certain way that they're not going to injure themselves or do anything that could get injured, it's normally that lack of strength and flexibility in their body rather than just their running technique that is going to cause them to get injured. So, if you bend forward at the waist and you rely on your quads rather than recruiting those glute muscles, then you're going to be unbalanced when you run, and that's going to have a bigger likelihood that you're going to get injured.
And so in terms of avoiding that injury or looking at run technique, and I realise that this is way beyond this is a series of podcasts on its own because everyone's different. The injuries come from everywhere. But I mean, are there any basic ways people can either find out where they have a problem or be conscious or sort of common problem areas that people come along, whether it's from sitting down, we all sit down a lot, and certainly that's going to be an age group thing. The professionals have a little more space and scope there. Or even, is there also the other side of the coin that, honestly, if you are not getting injured and you are comfortable, a bit like diets, there's no one run technique for everybody. It sort of has to be adapted for goals and the individual. So, I mean, that's sort of a bit of a mix up there. But is there any sort of direction you can give people to see, well, do I have a problem? Where might my areas be to work on? Or actually, am I in a good place already?
I think if people are running injury free, then we tend to just let them get on with it. But what I try and get people to do, I think one thing that's really neglected in running is that people I mentioned before, just put on a pair of trainers and just go for a run. Seems like the easiest thing in the world. But what I try and get people to do is, do 5, maybe 10 minutes of easy running just to get the heart rate up, and then do a series of dynamic exercises just to really activate those running muscles. Like I said, the glutes are the biggest muscles in your body. So they're the ones that you really need to activate. They're the ones that are going to give you stability and a good technique. So just a simple series of squats and single leg squats, double leg squats, just that kind of thing, just to really activate those muscles and then go into your run workout, even if it's an easy run as well. So every single run, you should be doing some dynamic warm-up just to really recruit the right running muscles. I think that's the biggest thing you can do to try and stay injury free.
I really like that, because I know there's all sorts of debate about static stretching's rubbish, or you can only stretch afterwards, or this, that, and the other. And I think, like all of these things, it's more nuanced and it's more personal. And I mean, I know I've always found static stretching, it may totally be placebo. I've always found it good. I've had plenty of injuries through the ultramarathon running in the past, and getting through those, maybe I just feel like if I've done the stretch, I feel okay. But I don't think there's any debate that once you're warm, the benefits of making sure you're recruiting the right muscles that's never going to not work for anybody. So that's such a great point there to put that in. So just literally 10 minutes in, I mean, what are we going to say? 3 sets of 10 squats, anything else? Or
I can put a little plan on my website, or a little PDF that we can send out in the show notes or something like that, just a little routine. And I've got some videos that I do on YouTube. It's me doing them, so they're not but I think that's the easiest way to do it. So a little routine that people can just do, some little exercises just to recruit the right muscles. And then, if you do this every single time, 5 to 10 minutes, easy running just to get things loose, and then do these dynamic stretches and then go into your workout. And, the benefit I've found with runners of staying injury free with that is just incredible. It's been really, really good.
Yeah, I mean,
like you say, Warren, if people are sat down all day, you're not recruiting your glutes at all when you sat down. And then as soon as you get up, they've not been used all day. And then people expect to go out and do a really, really fantastic run session. And even if it's an easy run session, just recruit the right muscles, you get good technique, best way to stay injury free.
Yeah, and I think that makes another great point, that it's great focusing on technique, on the right balance of training, on intensities and all this. But behind that, the two biggest things that are going to mess with your training and ultimately your race, it's illness and it's injury. And where do most triathletes get injured? It's on the run, and then you throw in the time crunch bit, a bit of pressure, a lot of personality types who want to achieve and beat themselves. You go out for that hard run, bang, the negative impact of 3 weeks out not being able to run, as well as the mental impact it has. So being able to discipline yourself to go easy at the beginning, and have this set 5-10 minutes in, right, I'm warmed up, now I'm going to do my exercises, and then go for it. That's such a
Yeah.
brilliant insurance policy. I love that, and it's not something I've ever done. I'm going to start. I'm going to start doing it. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
or
Oh,
I would warm up before. I'm pretty terrible at doing it afterwards, and that's it. Although, I mean, I have learnt better to feel the injuries when they're on their way and head them off
yeah.
at the pass. But
Yeah.
I just love that. I think that's a brilliant point you've made, and I'm definitely going to start doing that. And it just seems like it can't be
Yeah.
anything other than a huge win for everybody. So, if you do have, you say you've got some video and stuff, we can put some links in the show notes to help
Yeah, we'll
people out with this.
put some videos out, and so people can have a look at that, and then just get an idea of some of the exercises that you can do. Yeah, another good tip as well. I mean, I always think it's much more beneficial. Say you're going for a 40-minute run. I'd rather people run 35 minutes and do 5 minutes of stretching than run 40 minutes and no stretching. Like you said, that could be controversial because stretching's a big topic. But if it doesn't work for you, then don't do it. And if you're not injury free, then you don't need to do it. But I'm always a big fan of, even shortening the rundown and then giving yourself time to do that stretching and just take care of your body after a run.
Yeah, yeah, and I love it. So, brilliant. We've whipped through. We've done the swim, we've done the bike, we've done the run. Now, one thing we did touch on there as well, we've got illness, and for me, one of the big parts of illness and actually helping work against it is by getting your nutrition right. It can provide such a great base for that. And actually, there was for anyone who may be skeptical about the power of, let's go beyond just even supplements and what we eat on race day, your diet as a whole. We've just done a show with an Ironman athlete guy called Connor Devine over in Belfast. And Connor he was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis 12 years ago. And many multiple sclerosis sufferers by his stage of the condition would be in a wheelchair. And, you would not see that Connor had anything up with him. He's not taking any medication anymore. And his journey to that has been through a radical shake-up of diet, and the thing that he found worked for him was moving to a plant-based diet, because as he put it, primarily there's a lot of inflammation in the body caused by meat, cheese, dairy, eggs, that sort of thing, or animal products basically, and a lot of serious illness and multiple sclerosis is triggered or made worse by inflammation. So Connor's used that diet and that way of eating to treat himself, and what does he know? He came off his medication. He's racing Ironman regularly each year.
Wow.
Really the food on your plate as well as race day is such a big deal. And it's got to a point now, really hearteningly, where he was invited to speak at a conference of plant-based doctors. Whoever knew such a thing existed? 120 plant-based doctors in Ireland. Who are all now, he said, one of the first questions they ask their patients, when they come to them with anything, one of the first questions is, what did you have for breakfast? Which I think really starts to show there's a sea change in what you can do with, the benefits or downsides of what you do or don't put in your mouth, which is, I just find all this stuff fascinating, and unsurprisingly, that's kind of why Erica and I founded 33 in the first place. But with your journey in nutrition, which is kind of how we initially connected, I wondered if you could sort of tell us a little bit about how that's gone for you, where it started out, and where you're at now.
Yeah, so I guess when I first started racing in triathlon, I had absolutely no comprehension of nutrition whatsoever. I started off doing sprint races, so I didn't take anything whatsoever. And then when I started doing Olympic distance triathlons, I was aware that I might need a little bit more nutrition on the bike. So actually thinking back now, I probably did the right thing. I would take a banana with me. And then I think actually from convenience point of view, as people started to promote the gels and shakes and things like that a little bit more, I moved to I guess all the marketing really helped the companies as well, that I would start to use all the gels and things like that. But and I've been through the same journey as most people, where I'm suddenly in training, I've had a few drills, and then I hear the rumblings, and then the next thing I know, I park the bike up, I'm in a field somewhere, having tummy troubles. So yeah, and then there's always been this there's always been this feeling that you have to have this sports nutrition, and you have to find the right one that works for you. So, try these gels, and if they make you go to the toilet, then, maybe try some different ones, that kind of thing. But, I've always really enjoyed eating a little bit of food on the bike. So when I've done my longer Ironman distance events, I've always liked to eat a little bit on the bike as well. But then certainly as a coach, I realised then that I was actually responsible for other people's nutrition, and people would ask me what they should do and fuel their race. When I was training and learning and studying, there's always this general rule of thumb that you need so many carbohydrates per kilogram of body weight per hour. And that's how I used to race myself. So I used to measure it out, calculate it, look at the calories that are in the bars and the gels, and make sure I would have maybe 3 gels per hour while I'm racing to make sure I've got enough carbohydrates. And, I, as a coach, that's what I was told is the science, and that's what you should do. And that's what I prescribe to my athletes. And you're right. I listened to your a podcast that you did with the Kinetic Revolution guys I think it's about 18 months ago. And just listening to some of the things that you said in that podcast just changed my views completely on the way that we should view nutrition. Instead of calculating how many calories you need per hour, per body weight, blah, 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 it was more about listening to your body and just feeding it when it actually gets hungry. And it was just a revelation to me. It suddenly like switched on a light bulb that rather than just going with this method that every single person should use, it should be a little bit more about trying different things in training, find out what works for you, see what your body can do, and then just fuel it in a slightly different way.
No, that's really nice to hear, but it's interesting as well because your journey pretty much mirrors my own. With that, in the early days when I started running much longer distances, right, nutrition's key, and this is going back 10 years now. And yet the messaging out there, I like to think I'm not a stupid person. I know how to research stuff, and I would go and look at it, and I would get the messages, and it's exactly those messages you were talking about: eat before you're hungry, drink before you're thirsty, this many grams of carbs, etc., etc. And I did it, and like you, I spent a lot of time squatting in a lot of fields, and my immune system was not very happy, and all sorts of problems. And yet, this idea of trying different products, nothing seemed to change it. And it was only when I looked at what's in the products, you realise they're basically all the same. The majority of gels, bars, powder mixes, they're the same 4 or 5 ingredients. So there wasn't a difference. At that point, I started looking for something else, and also being more reactive on the nutrition. Because, would you find it? I find that sometimes on a ride or a long session, I can do the same session 2 weeks in a row and eat twice as much one week as I did the week before. Because I just felt like it. One day I didn't feel hungry and one day I did, and the results are in the same ballpark. It's not like I'm going slower or faster on one. It's just I'm different in my knees. Maybe it's what I ate the night before. Who knows what it is? But the idea that on that day I wasn't very hungry, I should be chucking down a ton of stuff. Forget the fact, it doesn't matter, even if it's bananas, but I should be force feeding myself when I didn't want it. That never sat well ultimately. But how do you find... How's that worked for you as you've adapted your own strategies, and what sort of reaction do you get from athletes when you work with them on this sort of basis?
I think the word that you mentioned there is one of the key ones, really. It's about, so I've always tried to be proactive with the nutrition, as in, again, one kind of train of thought was that if you're in a race and you lose energy, it's game over. You'll never recover from that. You've bonked, is the phrase that people say, and then that's it. That's game over. Your race is finished. So unless you're making sure you get calories and energy into your body before you start to bonk, that's what you have to do. And I guess that made sense to me, and that's why you always had to kind of make sure you're proactive with your strategy. What I've tried to do now, based on some of the things you said, was trying to be a bit more reactive with it. So, listen to my body, figure out when I'm hungry, and then start to fuel it when I need it. And, first of all, the biggest reason or biggest fear I had from not doing that was that, when I bonked, that was it. You get a crash and you feel really badly. But then when you explained, the reason because you would bonk is because you're having these sugary gels, which sends you on that spike and then drops you off the other side. So it's a really quick high and then it's a really quick low. Whereas if you fuel yourself very differently in training, so you have that slow increase of energy, and then when you start to feel hungry, you slowly start to feel hungry. You get different signals to your body that allows you to kind of put nutrition in before you actually crash totally. So it's not race over. And, I think the key message that I've tried to get across to my athletes is to try things in training. So, don't go into a race and just try and listen to your body and then throw some gels down. Is actually trying training to see what you can do. And, the best things that I've tried are fasted runs in the morning. So you wake up in the morning. I used to do my treadmill run in the morning, or I'd go for a nice easy run. And the first thing I would do is, through fear, I'd have a couple of biscuits and a coffee, just to make sure that I had some energy inside me. And, that's full of sugar as well. But what I slowly found is I tried to do those sessions without taking the biscuits on board and didn't miss them at all. I had no problems doing these sessions without the biscuits. So, and it's allowed me to just kind of build up a better fat burning capability in my training. And, on a Sunday when I go out for the bike now, I used to take, I buy a lot of like goods from Wiggle, and they send you little bags of Haribo every single time you buy something. And I used to just load up my back pockets with sweets and then make sure I was eating sweets like every half an hour so that I didn't feel hungry. But what I do now is I've tried to go out there and just wait until I'm hungry and then take some food with me and then try and eat it. And I'm finding now that I'm going 3 hours on a Sunday morning bike without actually needing that nutrition at all. And I come back, still don't feel hungry. And it's just been a real revelation to me, just, trying to be more reactive in the right ways rather than just proactively putting lots of nutrition down my throat for the sake of it.
No, that's so good to hear, and I think it's for anyone who is listening to this and thinks, well, that's crazy because once you're out and it's too late. You really explain well there how by building your fat burning efficiency, which for anybody who's not familiar with that, I mean that would be a whole show on its own, but I will put some links in the show notes to some posts that we've written on the blog about what that is, how you can do it. So if you want to research that more, that'll be there. By building that through your dietary and training changes, which are not really even that significant, you can build that. You've given yourself more energy in the tank, so you run out less quickly. But on top of that, if you then change your fueling sources, which is also in some of these links that'll explain there, you're getting a slower burn of energy than you would with an ordinary energy gel or energy drink, which, like you said, they spike you up, they drop you down. Because that spike up is so high and the drop down is so sharp, you feel them very keenly, and that all can increase the fear of like, oh, I'm going to run out. You feel a powerful spike, you also feel a powerful crash, which you don't want in a race. But if you do have a problem forcing stuff down to maintain that kind of artificial high, that's no good either. And then we get into stomach trouble, food trouble, and forget the fact the ingredients aren't good for you in the first place, so you wouldn't want to eat them, period, let alone in volume. By switching those fueling sources up, using real food, whatever your choices may be, and learning to listen to the body a little bit, the early warnings when the body is hungry, there are so many of them before that crash.
Yeah.
That you feel them, and because you've got this better fat burning base, you're now in control. But I loved your point that don't just go and try this on race day. You do have to test it in training. Everyone's different, because I've done so much of this now, as you have. I've talked to a lot of people about it. I've taught it quite a lot. But my first attempt, literally, this comes from me meeting that French ultra runner, Sébastien Chéniaud, UTMB, 2009. I asked him about nutrition, and instead of a long prescriptive list of this many carbs, I eat this every 20 minutes, that every 15 minutes, bottle of electrolyte every 3 hours, whatever it is. He just said you must listen to your body, give it what it needs. And halfway into the UTMB, I'm like 40, 50 miles into this ultramarathon in the Alps, and I'm in pieces, and my nutrition has gone to pot. I'm trying to force down gels I hate. I say, this is good. What? Yeah, it is 10 years ago now. And I tried his advice at an aid station, but I didn't. I was so unattuned to what my body wanted. Like, I wanted something, I followed what I wanted. I had coffee, I had chocolate, I had cake, I had fruit, I had soup, and I just left that aid station feeling sick and worse than I started. But as you adapt it really puts you in the driving seat, and it's so good to hear that you find that with the outlook. And I mean, do you think that's something that your athletes, you will continue to work with them?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I think it's the principle of trying to get people to listen to their own bodies and work out a strategy that works for them. So I can't see any downside to that at all. So it seems much better to me than saying, you need this many calories per kilogram, blah, 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 blah. So have a strict schedule that works for everybody. That, you work in training and you find out what works for you, and then you know what works for you. You go into your race really confident that you've got a strategy that works. You've tried it in training, it works, and it's different for every single person. There's a good analogy that, sometimes, like you said, some days you're really, really hungry, other days you're not. But you wouldn't eat the same food at the same time every single day, whether you're hungry or you're not. And it's just aligning what you do in your daily life to your race and thinking them almost in the same way just makes sense. So, yeah, I definitely encourage my athletes to work, to try things in training, and just figure out what works for them. And then, they're confident that they're not going to crash on race day, and, they've got a strategy that works.
Yeah. Mark, this is absolutely brilliant. I mean, thank you so much for making the time this morning. I know you got a ton of stuff on. Really good to go through this. And thank you as well for that pool session. It was absolutely brilliant. And the analysis that you then sent through, like I said, with all the diagrams and the lines, and the amount my arms cross over once you put the lines on there, it's like, okay, I got a lot to work on. So no, thank you for that. In terms of people finding you, getting in touch with you, we'll put all the links in the show notes, but where are the best places for people to get in touch with you and your training company?
So yeah, the best thing is just to find me online. So my website is mr-triathlon.com. MR comes from Mark Ryan, but it fits nicely into, everyone reads it as Mr. Triathlon. But yeah, mr-triathlon.com is the best place. All the information's on there. Then if there's a little contact box at the bottom. So if you need to get in touch, then go ahead and send me a message.
Brilliant. Now you're based in the Oxford area, but does that mean, do you train athletes remotely as well as in Oxford, or is it sort of all mainly around that area? What works best for you?
Anywhere really. So we're doing a Skype call today. I do so I have a weekly catch up with my athletes, and so that works well as Skype or a phone call. So it doesn't necessarily have to be face to face. So yeah, anybody who's interested, then just get in touch and we can work something out. Nice. But yeah, I tend to remote athletes or face to face. I'm happy with either.
Brilliant, Mark. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Keep up the great work.
Will do.
Woohoo! Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for Mark Ryan. I think you will agree Mark properly delivered there. As I said earlier, I love the way he communicates. He's got so much knowledge, but he's able to bring it across in such an easygoing manner. So I hope that is something that you can all use to take your swim bike run to the next level. I know it's stuff Erica and I are going to be using an awful lot over the next few weeks and months as we build up to our next race. So look, thank you very much for joining us. If you're looking for the very finest in sports nutrition for your next race, your event, or your training, well, of course, there's only one place to go. That would be 33shake.com. And as ever, if you're looking for the best content to take your game to the next level, well, why not check out our blog, look at our social feeds, or join us again for another one of these shows. Either way, it's been great having you here. We look forward to seeing you again. Any comments, anything like that, then please do get in touch with us or leave us comments in the notes below. It's all of our contact details are down there. And yeah, I think that's quite enough from me. I'm going to shut up. Let's get on to the next one. Thanks for joining.